Good evening, everyone. I'm Judy Lei, and I am born and raised in New York. I'm from Asian CineVision. I'm an actor, performer, filmmaker, producer, all that jazzy stuff. And I'm happy to host a live Q&A version for Bulge Bracket. First off, happy Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and welcome to the first ever Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival Virtual Showcase presented by Visual Communications. From celebrating our histories and culture to mobilizing our communities to be socially and politically active, we present the virtual showcase to keep us connected. Today, we highlight the world premiere of Bulge Bracket, written and directed by Christopher L. VC would like to thank our community partner for this program, which is Asian CineVision. Shout out New York City. Yeah. This showcase is brought to you by our partners at Comcast, NBC Universal, Sony Pictures, Nielsen, HBO, and Warner Media, and National Geographic. And if you want more info, please go to vcmedia.org and let's meet our panelists. First off, we have, drum roll, Feodor Chin. He is an actor, writer, and comedian from San Francisco. You probably know him from the series as Bolo. He is classically trained at UCLA's theater program and at the American Conservatory Theater. He's a performer on the UCB Upright Citizens Brigade. His TV credits include Big Little Lies, Lethal Weapon, Weird City, Jane the Virgin, and a lot more. Go to his IMDb and he might come after you. Second of all, we have Lanny Joon. He began his career on stage in New York City with off-Broadway shows such as The Dispute and Transfigured. His film credits include West 32nd, Baby Driver, and his TV credits include The Big Bang Theory, SWAT, and Hawaii Five-0. But you know what? I remember him from K-Town Cowboys.
Oh, snap.
We also have Jessika Vaughn, Miss Jessika. She plays Kathy in Bulge Bracket. Her breakout role was recurring as Becca, Queen of the Asian Mafia in MTV's Awkward, followed by recurring roles in The Messenger and Rush Hour. Her feature film credits include a standout lead role in the Sundance premiere Soul Searching by Benson Lee, and The Gambler, and Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. She was awarded Best Actress for her work in the 2013 short films Paper Lotus and Reunion. And Jessika, yes, I remember you from Paper Lotus. It was a USC film and I absolutely loved you in that short film.
Fun.
And last but not least, we have Mr. Christopher L. He's an award-winning filmmaker and digital media leader. As a commercial producer and director, Chris won an Emmy for his work with Fox Sports Net. Chris served for many years as head of business development, overseeing strategic partnerships and distribution for media brands, including TechCrunch and Moviefone. In 2019, his first narrative project, Bulge Bracket, was selected for the IPOs Project Forum. So, let's get into it. Let's start off with Chris. I see that your background is mainly in business and media. What or who inspired you to write a series about Bulge Bracket?
Yeah, so my wife was an investment banker in New York. And so when we were living in New York about 10 years ago, we were married, living in the same apartment, but I never saw her because she would go to work before I woke up, and then she would come home at like 2 or 3 a.m., while I was already asleep. It's like what Steve says in the film, they work like 100 hours a week. So the one day of the week that I got to see her would be Saturdays, and she wouldn't have to go into the work afternoon. So we would have these Saturday brunch dates, and she'd tell me like these crazy stories about what happened at work. And I was like, they need to make a TV show about this. And like nobody was making shows about bankers. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to write the show that I want to see.
Dang. And is Kathy's character based off of your wife?
Yeah, I'd say that it's definitely, my wife is the inspiration for that character. I think that it's not like it's not like a reenactment of her experiences at the bank, or it's not her exactly. But you know, I think the situationally, like an Asian woman coming into a bank and having to kind of manage these frat boys, and trying to navigate that whole culture is definitely, you know, draws a lot from her experience there.
Dang. That's really interesting because I have a lot of friends who are also a part of the finance world, and most of them are men. So to even see you write the lead role for an Asian woman to play in this, it is very interesting. And I'm really curious as to why you decided to choose a female protagonist versus, say, one of the frat bros.
Yeah, so admittedly, early drafts of the script had Steve as the protagonist, and this was, you know, back in 2011 when I was writing, and you know, I was inspired by shows like The Office and Scrubs, and you know, I was just writing, you know, stories, and that was kind of what I was seeing on TV. But I think that, you know, later I had kids and, you know, got busy, and this script just kind of sat on a hard drive. And then in 2017, when my kids were a little bit older, I had some free time, you know, after working my day job, I had some free time at night to write, and I was looking at this script. And, you know, by then, like, the world had changed, where we had Fresh Off the Boat on TV. We had, you know, Ken Jeong's show, Dr. Ken, which I watched religiously. We had like CBS's Rush Hour, and like all of a sudden the world was open to Asian American lead characters. And so, you know, it just kind of clicked that, like, well, you know, Kathy, who was initially a supporting role, I decided to put her front and center, and really tell a story that was something that was more fresh, right? Like, we've all seen shows with like frat boys, you know, goofing off, but we haven't really seen something that was a woman navigating this Wolf of Wall Street world. And so, yeah, I think it was, you know, that was the process of you know, rewriting and further developing it.
I see. And since we're talking about Kathy, Jessika, can you go into a little bit of yourself and your own character? Do you see yourself relating to her at all, either in this movie industry, or if you've worked at a job where, say, you're maybe one of the many women in the room? How do you feel? And if so, how do you relate to the character?
Well, I definitely relate to the character. I think I mean, I love her. I would go on so many adventures with her, but I do think like it's a struggle, because I think we're just now adjusting to understanding the kind of systemic issues that we've created for ourselves. And, you know, a lot of these female empowerment things have only happened in the last 60 years. And so it is somewhat of a new change that we're all going through. And so I do think that it's very current and still a struggle, the kinds of things that Kathy goes through in all industries. I really don't think it's just limited to the finance industry. I do think that from what Chris shared and the stories I did when researching, it seems like that time and that world specifically seems to bear the brunt of a lot of it, just based on the numbers. But I do think it's something that exists across the board. And so I'm so happy to finally, especially in media, have a chance for our voices and our perspectives to be heard more and more.
What about for Lanny and also Bolo? How do you guys see yourself in the character, and can you relate to the character at all?
Go ahead, Theo.
Well, I
Bolo is definitely much more driven and than I think I might normally be, because I just, yeah, what it's like 100-hour work weeks is what, 80-hour work week, like forget it, I can never do that. So that's definitely not my thing. But he comes from a place of he certainly has a very understandable chip on his shoulder, and he had to deal with some racism and discrimination that I think was certainly for me relatable, and so I think that was something that a way into that character. But yeah, it's but overall, it's he's a very fun guy that I probably would maybe want to have a drink or two with, but that's about it, I think.
Do you run laps? How do you pump yourself up to be such a like mean and conniving or controlling?
Well,
I'm thinking of.
Well, I tell you, it was Cassandra, the costume designer. I think the costuming really helped, because I'm pretty much a t-shirt and jeans kind of guy, and so getting into those suits, and just like really tight pants really kind of get you in that kind of a very angry mindset. So I think that helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess for me, Jackson was he was very therapeutic to play, and I've always said this to everybody: to be able to be that cruel and mean, and to enjoy it was very therapeutic. I would definitely say the similarities. The
charm is all. That's all Lanny.
Thank you, Theo.
He is that charming.
I think Jackson has always won at everything in life. He's always been the best, and he always looks down on people that don't do that. And I think growing up, I was definitely not that. If anything, I was the black sheep of everywhere I went, pretty much. But in terms of, I guess, finding your own placement in this world and finding your own stance and finding your own voice, I guess I have that similarity with Jackson, and there is definitely a temperament that is a bit similar to Jackson's, but I don't think I'd ever berate anybody like Jackson in like a public space or especially in a professional workspace. But yeah, similarities, absolutely. Not similarities, I would hope so.
And Chris, what about you? Were you writing any of these characters based off of people you know from your own office workspace, or how did these strong personalities come about?
Yeah, I think that there are, they're just sort of the composites of people that I've known, right? So I think that, as a writer, one of the things that I do is, I'm always kind of like taking in information in the world around me and like, oh, what would make an interesting, story or character based on interactions that I've had with people around me. And so, for like Bulge Bracket, like I had like a running Google Doc where I was just like collecting like ideas or moments or stories, and then like kind of weaving those into developing these characters and who they would be and what they would do.
I see. I think in the series there were two moments that really stuck with me, and one of them was when JP, the real life character's name, he was deciding, no, it wasn't JP, it was the other guy with the curly hair. He was deciding whether or not to stay beyond 3 a.m. so that the next day he can come in a little bit later. So is that based off of a real life situation? And the second thing that really resonated with me was the character that Gigi played. I felt like she was such a contrast to Jessika's character, because Jessika was really straight-laced and really about getting the work done, whereas Gigi kind of came through a family connection. And so how did you see these two female characters different in a way, and in what ways are they similar in that the way they're being treated by the male counterparts, and why did you decide to write these characters that way?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of questions there. I think the first one is deciding to stay till 3 a.m. is that like a real situation or not? From my notes, actually, that at the bank where my wife worked, that was a real thing where at one point, one of the bosses did say, if you stay past 3 a.m., you must email me to tell me like what you're doing there, and they did it because it was like that was a real thing that people actually were staying that late. And so I think that on a nightly basis, those conversations were actually happening. Like, well, it's only 2:30 and I'm done. Should I like stay till 3 and maybe catch a break, or should I just go home? So that's real. I think the other question that you asked was about sort of contrasting the character of Rosie and Kathy. And I think that, yeah, intentionally they were written to be, different. I think that, the scene where Kathy sort of confronts Rosie when she's like messed up the pitch books, like it gives you a very good sense of like what, where they're coming from and like what their values are. Kathy like sort of values like hard work and, diligence and getting things right. And Rosie's character sort of has been relying on her looks and her family kind of to get by. It's like one of my friends who watched the show like was texting me last night and was saying like, is Rosie like secretly smart? And it was one of his questions. And I think that like Rosie actually is smart in her own way, where she's been able to get other people to do her work for her. Like she gets Mitch to do her work for her. And so like that that takes that's like some street smarts that allow you to do that. And so I think that they kind of sort of just operate with a different set of tactics on how to get work done.
And what about Bolo and Lanny, when you guys were in character, so to speak, did you at all feel like, oh, I shouldn't be playing such an alpha? Or like, did it feel right to you as you were playing the characters? I'm kind of curious on that.
Go ahead, Fia.
Well, I think, anytime you like, even if you're playing a villain or a bad guy, you never think you're a bad guy, because otherwise, as soon as you pass any judgment on a character, then you're not able to honestly inhabit that. So no, it never felt wrong. And I think, I think the great thing about acting is it can be very cathartic, and you get to do things that you don't ordinarily get to do, or say things that you don't ordinarily get to say. When we were shooting that scene with, was it Colin who plays
Steve?
Steve, who gets like
Colin.
I think that was the only day, like, met him that day, and like the very first thing is like just saying fuck you, get the fuck out, like, and just yelling at this poor guy. I mean, yeah, okay, I mean, that feels a little bad, but I mean, it's all acting, it's fine, but it is kind of funny when you think about it. That's but yeah.
No, going off what Theo said, it was I think my very first scene I had to shoot was by raiding Mitch, right, Chris? It was the very first.
I think that's right. Yeah.
So that was, that was literally just after the table read, and you say hellos, and then you just rip this soul's heart open. And when you asked, did it feel right? It felt so right. That goes back to what Theo was saying. It's in that moment, playing a bad person, you can't really, it's not this idea of bad or good, it's just in that moment you just have to get the work done, and this idiot's getting in the way.
Right.
And I think that's the therapeutic aspect of this character. It's so simple, right? I'm smart, you're dumb, what's the problem? And I think when we can make life that simple, it's a for me, it's a breath of fresh air because life is always complicated, and to be able to play someone like Jackson, it was so refreshing. And don't get me wrong, I think I actually apologized to Chris, the actor who played Mitch. I'm so sorry, but thank you for holding all of my junk. Yeah, but it's very therapeutic. Yeah.
He took a lot of abuse from I think everybody.
Everybody. Yeah. There was a certain point where he was just red. He just turned red because he was just hearing all these terrible things from all these other people. It was, acting, but when you're in the moment, as they say, you can't help but just feel it. And poor guy.
Yeah.
Just ripped to shreds, but I'm sure he had a great time.
He actually did have a great time. There was one day that he wasn't scheduled to be on set, and he was like, "Hey, can I just show up anyway and hang out?"
Oh, that's the best. Yeah.
No, but kudos to you and Christine and for the casting. I think finding that group of guys that they're just so that those scenes are some of my that I'm not even in them, but I enjoy watching. That just they have such a great chemistry, and it's a real energy that they have that it's really something to see, and it's great job finding them because they're all terrific.
Right. Speaking of Chris, the actor who was playing the sponge, I can't help but notice, Jessika, your face whenever these fights or these verbal abuse is going on. Like the way you reacted was so real. And can you just talk about how you feel when it was all happening?
Well, I mean, first of all these actors are so great. So it made it so easy. Like the job was it's just so easy because you're you can just react to everything that's already happening. They make it so real for you. But speaking to what Lanny said about how fun it is to get to berate everyone, it is nice when you're the asshole or the bad person, the villain, because you do get to just let out everything you would want to say. But I think Kathy is on the other end of that. She's, it's her first couple days. She's trying to make a good impression. She doesn't want to rub anyone the wrong way. So she has to keep her mouth shut, and she thinks she has to keep her head down. And when she finally gets the courage to say something, it doesn't even go well. So I think she is feeling so trapped. And I think it just was all these feelings of this is inappropriate, that's inappropriate, all these things are not right. Is this what the work environment is going to be? Okay, I guess I just have to suffer through it. I need to get my work done. It's just stressful. So I think it's way more fun to be Lanny's character in that situation.
Yeah.
Playing basketball, in this office.
Because you can't ask for a better job. Come on.
Sexually harassing, whatever.
Whoa.
There's no children in this, right? I'm kidding.
Really? Okay.
His eyes were on you for sure, though. And I really saw a huge cast when I was watching the whole series. Not only the characters who had a speaking role, even folks who were in the background in the office at 3 a.m. So since there was such a large cast of folks, did you guys get a chance to interact with each other at all on set when you guys weren't working on a scene together?
Yeah, it's great you asked that, because the one aspect about this cast and crew is that we all still keep in touch and we still talk. And I think that was cultivated while we were on set. Because no one really knew each other. I knew Jessika, I knew Fio, but for the bulk of us, we didn't really know each other. And I think we just had a really good time on set. It felt like camp, like a summer camp going to set. And I only shot 3 days, 2 or 3 days. And so I only, had a short amount of time to be with these guys, but we clicked so much that we've been talking since. We talk online and we try to get together. So there is something to say that's very special about that. Yeah.
I overlapped with everybody. I think if I didn't, speak to them, I was probably sleeping on a couch in the lobby of BULGE because I was so exhausted all the time. So I was just
you were doing a play
yeah.
that's right. Yeah, you had to go do this play after every, yeah, that's nuts.
Chris did this amazing thing where he made it work so that, because I was already doing a play at the Huntington Library for, it was awesome, but like 6 nights a week, I had to do a play out in like Pasadena, basically. And so Chris did an amazing thing with Christine. They arranged it so that I would shoot like from, I don't know, 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then get shuttled off to Pasadena to do the play at night and then turn around and do it over again. So I did that for like 2 weeks, I think, in a row. So I think sometimes I was just sleeping on extra set pieces or wherever I could find something to get a nap.
Damn, that's dedication.
Yeah, I mean, I got to give props to like Christine and like our production staff who did all like the scheduling. They were able to schedule Jessica's scenes, around, her play. And, it's the kind of thing where we had some concerns going in that like, oh, she's going to be like super tired, basically working 2 full-time jobs, during our shoot schedule. But I was like, oh, but that's going to be super authentic because like real investment bankers don't get any sleep.
Oh.
So yeah, we're doing it.
Method.
Yeah.
Check your bank account to see if it reflects the work.
A play and an indie thing? I don't know. Maybe it wasn't the smartest,
You don't do it for the money. It's not about the money.
Speak for yourself, Theo. I'm kidding. Oh man.
What about you, Theo? Did you overlap with anyone on set?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was probably about there maybe for half the shoot, I guess. But yeah, I feel like I got to interact with a good amount of the cast. But yeah, I just gotta say, even though it is an ensemble piece, really the heart and soul, I think it really is Kathy and Jessica. She does such a great job of being essentially the audience surrogate, that you're really seeing this world through her eyes, because it is a bizarre, like crazy world. And I think you need a character like that to kind of guide you through it, because otherwise it's just, if everyone was, the kind of frat boy kind of energy, it'd be a little off-putting. So you need someone who can kind of, be your audience surrogate there. And she does such a great job with it.
Oh, thanks, Theo.
Yeah, no,
Theo, you
sure.
were amazing. I felt like every scene with Theo just feels like he's just in character, like it's water. So it's everything's real. You're just having conversations with him. It's perfect.
Yeah, Theo, and
It's a good time.
There was this, Don gravitas that Theo was able to, he has that himself, and to kind of like see him just show that, hold his cojones in his hands and like just show it to the world. It was awesome. Because
not physically, not actually,
but but it, yeah, because but the thing about Theo is he's done everything, and it doesn't surprise me that a character like this, it's just, it's in his back pocket pretty much. And he just shows up to work and he does, and he goes home to his beautiful wife.
Chris, is that why you casted him and everyone else on cast? Like, did you know these actors beforehand, or you really had to pull in a casting director to look for these folks?
So we could not afford a casting director, but each person that we cast there's a little bit of a different story. Like with Theo, I've been familiar with his work for years. I used to be a programmer at CamFest up in San Francisco, and we programmed this awesome Asian gangster film called Baby. It's like the Asian American Boys in the Hood that Theo was in, like 10 years ago. And I just remembered his performances from that. And so when it came time to cast Bolo, Theo was like at the top of our list of people that we wanted to reach out to. Yeah, so it's like, Asian American film festivals like this is a great way to source talent, for sure. We got Lanny because Lanny is a friend of my brother-in-law, David S. Lee, who's also a filmmaker. through David, I was able to get the script into Lanny's hands, and then we met, and Lanny loved it, and so we were able to do that. And then I think Kathy, we had a hard time, like, because we actually did open auditions for Kathy, and we had a hard time finding someone. And I met up with a friend of mine, actually the director of K-Town Cowboys, Daniel Park, who Daniel read the script and loved it, and I was like, hey, like who would you get for Kathy? And he, you know, said Jessika, and so we were able to get in touch with Jessika. I sent her the script on a Friday, and then like we were talking Monday, and she was like, I love it. How do we make this happen?
Oh, that's the way to go. And for everyone else who was on the cast, did you do it through somewhere like Actors Access or backstage? How'd you find those new people?
Yeah, so basically everyone else was through like auditions. Like our producer Christine Kwan, who's great. She and I worked together to cast this, and so she was posting it on backstage and all those places. And then she has like networks of you know, other people to get it out to, and yeah, and it was amazing that we were able to find just the right people for the roles. And for a lot of those actors, like the minute they walked into the audition, like and read the lines, I was like, oh, I knew that was our Danny. Like for Chris King Wong, he had prepared like 3 sets of sides for Danny, and after like the second set, I was ready to cast him right there. And so I was like, all right, we don't need to see any more. And then I think he thought that like he bombed it, you know, because I think that's what usually happens when they tell you, no, we don't need to see any more. That
no, wait.
But it was actually because like we had 25 speaking roles to cast, and I was like, yeah, we got you. Like we're gonna call you. Like we need to see other people, you know. But yeah, like it was really great. Finding all this great new talent. So I got to thank Christine for all her help with that.
Yeah, I really love all the other characters who are in the series. I guess more of the technical / producing side of things. So how long did it take for you to film the whole series? And I was also curious as to why you decided to do a short form series versus something like a feature film per se.
Yeah, so we shot the whole thing in 12 days. So what everyone watched, you know, last night or this afternoon is basically, you know, the 6 episodes of the short form series, like all edited together without like the end credits. So it's like the binge watch edition. And you know, I think that the script was originally conceived as a TV pilot. And was trying to basically develop it through like the traditional Hollywood methods. And you know, I met with a lot of, you know, great industry people who were very gracious to, you know, read that pilot script and, you know, take meetings with me. And these are people that like have, you know, important award statues and like have developed network shows, and they were all very nice. And but the main advice was like, you know, look, if you know, to really get this made in Hollywood, you need like a established showrunner to come on board. And like I really didn't have connections to get someone like that. So at that point we realized that we needed to pivot and like basically make this as an indie film. But the reason why it's a short form series is that I think that as a series, it sort of stays a little bit more true to its roots as a TV show, where you know, as a series, it's this large kind of ensemble. Even though Kathy is the heart and soul of it, all these other characters have their own ambitions and dreams. And as a series, we get to spend a little bit of time like exploring that. And sort of as a series, it opens up for kind of to tell more stories in this world, like if there's an opportunity in the future.
And since it was shot over 12 days, I couldn't tell because the production looked amazing. The cinematography, I have to say, was really mind-blowing, and everyone, down to what they were wearing, was also, it seemed well financed. So did you get a lot of financing for the film? If so, or the series, and if so, how did you find the money? Yeah, it just looked like a high-end series.
Oh, thank you. For financing, we did it like an indie film. I put in some of my own money, and then I asked my richest friends to give me money. So these are people like doctors, lawyers, bankers, you know, software engineers, like all my friends who have, you know, jobs that make their parents proud. You know, I asked them for money, and you know, and even with that, like, we were able to stretch every dollar because of the amazing like cast and crew. Like everyone who worked on this is like sort of top-notch talent. Like, you know, great costumes, great hair and makeup, you know, great set design. And we were only able to like stretch our dollars because everyone worked at a fraction of what their normal like rates were, because they believed in the story, because they really identified with the, you know, what we were trying to do. So,
and
you know,
how
it's
do you
like
tell them, like, for them to work in the fraction of what they normally cost?
how do we ask that?
Like, how did you persuade them to work on this project for a lower dollar amount?
So, you know, I think that a lot of it is from our amazing like production crew, right? Like Philip Shum, our DP, he has like a crew of guys like on camera and grip that he works with all the time on like music video shoots and stuff. And so he was able to convince them to, you know, to come on board this. And then our line producer, Gia Min, like she produces a lot of like commercials and stuff. And she was able to produce, like convince, you know, people that she's worked with in the past to come on board. And so it's all like kind of relationships. And I think that that's sort of like the key to getting passion projects done is good relationships. And so like one of the things that our producer Christine Kwan said was that like she very meticulously interviewed everyone that came on board this project, because she wanted to make sure that basically we only hired nice people, you know, essentially, that you know, so even though like all the actors are playing jerks and stuff, like in real life everyone is like great, and that's why they all still hang out together. And I think that made it a really great work environment, because not only was everyone, you know, great at their craft, but also like great to be around.
Aww. And for the actors,
You take a screenshot, Lanny?
No pictures.
yeah, I did. I screenshot it just in case, you know, for memory's sake. Oh man, I did not know that they have this function where they tell you. So what was the first impression when you guys walked onto set? And can you share one of the craziest moments you guys had filming this whole thing? I know for Jessika, you were kind of like sleepless. Yeah, why don't you guys share?
Well, I could definitely say anytime you sign on to do something that's independent or low budget, you're not really sure what you're getting into. And I think it was probably that first table read when it was on set of the Baldwin brothers office, and just walking in on that floor, you're like, oh, well, at least for me, it was like, oh wow, oh okay, this is a real like, this is a real thing. Because I mean, it looked great. They you know, took this whole office building, this one floor, and turned it into the bullpen that you see in the in the show. And I was very impressed. And you know, not that I was going to phone it in or anything, but like, you know, you show up, you're like, oh, okay, this is a real thing. And it makes you want to, I mean, you're just like, okay, I better, you know, step my game up here. But that was definitely, that was where I was coming from. But
Especially when you saw the basketball machine, you're like, oh.
Yeah, you know, that was like, this is primo. And I gotta say, the crafty every day was top notch. There was ramen, you know, I had ramen every day. And yeah, it was terrific.
What's next?
Go, Jess.
What? You go.
Honestly, for me, it was the very first day. It was it was early in the morning. It was the very first shot was with my character Jackson, basically drilling a hole into Mitch's heart. I was pretty nervous that day because one, Chris was like, just play, right? You know, like whatever you want to do, go. I'm like, can I just say what's on the script? Like, why do I have to? And I realized, you know, because when it comes to improv, I do get a bit sketchy and I get scared if I'm honest. But the cast was so great and so comfortable to be around. I think when action was called and the words start to come out, you realize that one, it's fun, but the therapeutic aspect of it, it was the catalyst to making it that much more fun because one, the writing was incredible, and two, to be amongst these great performers, it felt like an orchestra, and that was like when it clicks, you can't describe it. When it clicks, that's when the ride happens. And that ride can only happen when you, I guess, get scared. And I was lucky enough to have that experience of being scared, and then it turned out great. But yeah, initially it was the very first scene for me.
I mean, I agree. I think that first table read, everyone was so great and I was so excited. But I have to say the craziest thing I saw happen on set was at one of the ending scenes when everyone in the bullpen goes nuts. And that was like the one thing that they really wanted to like get me in there before they like did all the rest of the hijinks, because I had to leave at 4 every day.
Right.
And so this was probably at like 3:30 or like 3:45 or 3:50, but like it just was so crowded in that room. There's like people on tables, everyone's trying to think of like the craziest things they can do, like yelling and screaming, waving around and dancing and just going nuts. And I know Kathy probably is more straight-laced, but I was really feeling like, whoa, they're going for it. That was the There's no space for anybody there, but like Theo and Lanny, they were going nuts.
Lanny for sure. I remember looking over at him, and he was doing that actual bolo face, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember the last half of that.
I was just like,
it was just
God,
like lightheaded. Yeah.
A lot of testosterone.
There was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone's chest was a little bit bruised after that scene too, because we went for it.
Yeah.
And it was that moment, you know, you see everyone's eyes, and everyone has crazy eyes, and so you're just feeding on each other, and it's infectious. Unbeknownst to you, you're literally assaulting yourself. It was great.
Yeah, I definitely felt the love watching everyone either belittling each other or like even within that, I saw the love that you guys gave each other, and it was really heartwarming. And I'm just wondering, because I do know that you guys also work in mainstream television, whether it's as actors, as voice actors, or on stage. Do you guys have that sense of camaraderie when you guys are on bigger sets, and when you guys are working more on indie film sets, do you guys have this sense of love? And since there's so many different changes in this industry right now, in terms of newer platforms being pushed out and more online content being pushed out, do you guys see yourselves growing in this industry and in this changing landscape? And you guys can go in whichever order. Why don't we start with Jessika this time?
Hey, I'm gonna pull a Chris. That was a couple questions there. I'll go with the first one, which is that I think it depends on the project. It really has to do a lot of times, and props to Chris and Christine and all the people who, you know, put this project together and the cast that they got. But I think a lot of times it's top down. So if they're cultivating a culture of like being welcoming and getting everyone together and bringing together nice people, then that's what you get. You get like a really solid family, and everyone loves each other, and you wish you could work with them every day for the rest of your lives. So I think it always depends, but of course it's special when it's an indie because you're all there not really making money. So you're all like doing it because you want to. And so I think especially with indies, you get a crazy bond, and then you just feel like, wow, I know these people on a different level because I've seen them underslept, hungry, starving, working when they can't think properly, and you feel like you know them really well and you love them for it. And then your second question, I'm hoping, yes, like I'm hoping that all these new opportunities, and the one cool thing about streaming is that hopefully we get to see more of the things we want to see, because I think up until now we've kind of had to choose what we watch out of what's been given to us, and there's not that much option for someone who maybe is a minority or has a very different perspective than everybody else to see themselves reflected in that, and the stories that they're bringing in, and the kinds of educations they're getting from the media. So I hope that with all this streaming, and I certainly will fight for it in the projects I develop, that we really have a chance for fresh, new, different perspectives and stories to finally be told and voices to be heard.
Oh, doesn't mean you're developing a few series.
I may be developing some stuff. So fingers crossed, and then I'll have to ask Chris's rich friends.
That's how you do it.
Share the resources.
Yeah, I think you're up.
Me? Oh, well, I mean, I think, certainly, it's not often that you get to work on something and you have that feeling where it's like, well, this is special, and it's a special group of people brought together, and it's a good script, and so yeah, it was a blessing, and but it's kind of rare. So I'm definitely happy and proud to be a part of it. And I think it also goes without saying that as minorities, and particularly as Asian American actors, it's not often that you get to play characters that are three-dimensional and like just people. And so kudos to Chris for creating those opportunities for us, and yeah, hopefully we can continue to do that in the future.
Yes, crossing fingers for part 2.
Mm.
Yes. So we are at about 5 minutes left for this Q&A, and we're taking some questions from Facebook. And I think this question kind of loops into what we were just talking about. Is from Derek Coulterman. He asked, how can your audiences help with getting more of your stories produced? Love to see these indie stories and want to support getting more out there. So anyone who's developing.
I think, definitely by supporting the people who are going to create those, and then tuning in because at the end of the day, it's a business. And unfortunately, when we go to try to sell something, that we're selling to business people, and they're going to look for numbers. And if we don't have the numbers, then we're kind of at a disadvantage, because then we have to ask our rich friends for money. So I think what you can do is to help by following the page or subscribing or getting more people to tune in. I think when it is an underrepresented voice, if you did enjoy it, then to try to bring more people in as an audience, numbers always help. And also to vote with your wallet, because I think for me nowadays, when I see a whole bunch of stuff being blasted in my face, like commercials for these huge movies that I don't have any interest in, I no longer watch it just because everyone is watching it. I'm like, you know what? That's not the kind of content that I'm relating to. So I'm going to vote with my wallet. I'm not going to watch that. I'm going to wait for the things that I really love, that I feel like are something I really want to see, and a voice that I really want to hear. And then I'm going to put my money toward that. I'm sure everyone else will have a lot more ideas too.
Right.
No,
So
that sounds good.
Derek, all of their Instagrams, all of them.
I just learned so much right there, Jessica. Thank you so much.
This feels just like the show,
Yes. So kind of relating to that too. So Diego from Facebook says that watching the series made me feel really upset about the work culture that Kathy was in. Was the intention to make the audience feel that way?
Yeah, I think that it is supposed to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I do want to say that this is not like an indictment on just like banking or finance. That like, you know, a lot of work cultures are like this. You know, like when you know, Me Too is happening. Like I heard a lot of my female friends share their own experiences, you know, across all industries, and it's just really like disheartening that stuff, you know, still goes on. And so so yeah, I think that we do want to make you feel uncomfortable, and then to think about like, well, what are the things that you can do to help change it, you know?
Mm. And similar to that, we have a question from Ashley, and she says, for the scene where Bolo speaks Chinese to Kathy, was that imagined that something like that would happen, Asian to Asian behind closed doors in a dominantly white world, or is that from experience?
So Theo improvised that, and and we decided to keep it in. Theo, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I thought that would be a nice, yeah, because the Chinese wasn't in there. And I remember when we shot it, I think, yeah, I just said it whilst we were shooting it. I heard your face, and it was on my, it was on me, so it wasn't on camera. But like Jessica's face when I said that the Chinese came out, it was very funny.
Oh, that was my face. Well,
Well, he was just like, "What is he doing?" Because like, yeah, it, like, you know, it's like he's going completely off script. Like, what is he doing?
Well,
Like,
I mean, I didn't understand it because it was in Cantonese, not
right.
So I was like,
Right.
I don't know what he just said.
Right. But I think the idea of it was that, yeah, that it was like this kind of shared culture that they had, and because it was definitely a moment where, yeah, Bolo's reaching out and like, hey, you know, we're more alike than you think, kind of thing. But yeah, and I can't say it was like truly improvised because I don't actually speak Chinese that well. So I think I talked to my dad probably a few nights earlier and asked him, "Oh, how would you say this?" Yeah, and it showed up on set and threw it in.
Right, you had an earpiece.
Right, yeah,
Just
to completely throw Jessica off her game there. That's just like, what is this guy doing? Oh my god.
It's perfect. Bolo's supposed to. So I
Just
I'm like, whatever he did that I found, I was just like, okay, just react.
Yeah.
Oh, last point before we wrap it all up. Where can we see the next steps for this series?
Yeah, so I'd say that follow us on social media at Bulge Bracket Series, and we'll be able to announce, you know, sort of wider distribution soon, but not right now. But there will be more opportunities to watch it soon.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much to Chris, Lanny, Theo, and Jessika for joining us. I have one last pitch from VC before we wrap this whole baby up. So come back for a special artist, filmmaker Mark Tran and actor David Hyun of All About Dad. The conversation is going to be moderated by none other than Anderson Lei. The conversation is happening next Wednesday, May 6th at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and the film is available to view now. There are two great short film programs starting their viewing window on this upcoming Monday. Cinema Sala presents Amped Up, featuring a short doc from Ruby Ibarra and Evelyn Abamos, and We Are Together, featuring the world premiere of The Shower from Pia Shah. So keep checking vcmedia.org/virtual for more updates. And thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll chat more soon. Bye.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
How do we?
Do
we just
leave,
stop?
or is that?
Wow.
Okay.
Are
we
still
still
on?
or
We still live?
Are we still on?
Let's really talk about how we feel.
Well, actually, Lanny's gone. So
Okay. Well, hey, great seeing you guys.
Yeah.
All right,
Good
great
time. Stay safe.
everyone.
Stay
Okay,
healthy.
Bye.
All right. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Judy.